going to throw. One-on-one. Davis has it. Touchdown. Carolina wins. Carolina is the Coastal Division champion. Javonte Williams to the left of Howell. He'll send him out into the flat right side. Howell looking, standing tall, lets it go. Man there. Touchdown. Touchdown, Carolina. The pistol. Jackson behind him. Hands off to Jackson. He tried a jump pass, and it's intercepted. Zack intercepts it. Holy cow, Carolina's going to win. And off to Javonte Williams again. Pops it to the left. Javonte leaps over a man, crosses the 50, trucks over a defender, spins by another. Goodness gracious, he's down to about the 15, and he did absolutely everything in one carry.
Here's the shotgun snap to Aguilar. Drops back. Pressure coming. Aguilar floats it up. Incomplete. No flags. Head on back up the mountain. Carolina wins it in double overtime. Loftus out of the shotgun. Throws to the end zone. Incomplete. Incomplete. The bell belongs to us. Carolina wins it. 47-45 in double overtime.
Bernard fields it at the 26. Heading to the far side. Gio at the 35. Gio, he's at the 50. No, he's not. Yes, he is. Gio is going to take it for a touchdown. Are you kidding me?
What's going on, guys? Welcome into another edition of the Heel Tough Blog Podcast. It's your host, Anthony Pagnotta, here with you guys, as always, on a Thursday evening. Hope you guys are enjoying your week, getting ready to wrap it up tomorrow on Friday. And it's been a while since we've talked a little Tar Heel football. So let's get in here. Let's talk a little recruiting. You see Zack Hubbard next to me, so you know that means we are talking about the 2026 recruiting trail and what Carolina is doing on that trail right now. And we have to start, by asking about Trashawn Ruffin. We'll get his take on Carolina's most significant commitment that they have in that class so far. We'll also talk about the quarterback position. They lose Zayd Lott. What does that mean for Carolina? And now, who could they potentially be going after, or who should they be going after? We'll talk about that as well. And then before we get out of here, the in-state recruiting, that's an area where Carolina not doing too great in right now. If you look at some of the guys that have Carolina on their list, the guys that do not. Despite landing a guy in Trashawn Ruffin that is an in-state prospect, it looks like Carolina not hitting the home state as hard as they have in years past. What do we think about that? We'll let you know here on this edition of the podcast. But as I said, want to start off by talking about Trashawn Ruffin, because the last time that I was on here, I talked to you guys a little bit about his commitment, how important it was for Carolina, but we didn't get Zack's opinion on him. And I think this is the perfect guy to bring you in on, because this is a guy that's rated inside of the top 200. This is going to be one of the biggest pieces that Carolina has in their 2026 recruiting class. So what did you think of Carolina being able to seal the deal, flip him from Texas A&M, and add him really as the current cornerstone piece of the 2026 recruiting cycle?
Well, I think there's a good word that you used there in describing this as one of the biggest additions. I think that's both literally and figuratively true when you talk about a guy like Ruffin. First and foremost, just as a player, he is a defensive lineman, specifically playing on that interior. 247 Sports lists him at 6'3" and about 307 pounds. So already over that 300 mark, already able to play on the inside. And that's what shows up in film. He's a guy that's going to play likely as a nose guard, potentially as a 3 technique, but really plays in the middle of that defense as a space heater, a guy that potentially 2 gap, depending on how this program and how this defensive staff wants to run their line of scrimmage. He's going to take up space in the middle. He is going to occupy blockers and make everything difficult in the middle of that offensive line on the line of scrimmage. And, that's an essential piece here. That's an essential piece to most football teams, is the ability to stop the run. We've heard previous coaches mention it. We've seen various iterations of this Tar Heel defense, be able to stop it to varying degrees, some good, some not as much. And it's essential to what this current program, this current staff, Bill Belichick in particular, wants to do with the defense. That's what the defenses in New England did during their heyday. They played a lot of 3-down or 4-down linemen, but they put a big space eater in the middle to take everything to the outside to let the linebackers and safeties clean that up. So I think it's absolutely essential just to any football team. I mean, we've seen that emphasized through this staff thus far. They've been very public of, we want to improve the line of scrimmage. We want to be a line of scrimmage team. And this is how you do it with a guy like that. And then just for what this signing or what this commitment means overall, like you mentioned, it's a top 200 guy. It's a guy that's in state. And, that is something that we're going to discuss, the good and the bad, here a little bit later on. But this is something that they need. It's a guy that can generate some buzz from them. And we've seen that with previous coaching staffs of, if you get one or two of these in-state guys, you can build some momentum. Huge win to get the flip from Texas A&M. That's a program that, recruits very well, not only in their backyard, but nationally. They're very aggressive in the NIL space. So, getting a commitment like this, it's huge for the program. It's a huge confidence boost, and it's one that you really hope that they'll be able to utilize moving forward to build on that momentum as we move into the summer and then into the 2025 season.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing is, can you build off of that? Is he able to sort of help you recruit? We see him tweeting at some of the prospective recruits that Carolina has that they're still going after. So he definitely feels like he's really involved in that side of things. And yeah, I mean, as a player, there's a lot to like just based on the body size. And that's really what Carolina is looking at. They are looking for a specific body type right now. Bill Belichick wants those guys that are going to be able to take up two defenders in the middle, or two offensive linemen in the middle of the play, and open things up for those linebackers, as you were talking about. And that's what Ruffin's going to be able to do. I mean, yeah, when we last saw, the measurements are 6'3", 307 pounds. I would imagine we're about to get new measurements on him, because I believe he is one of the guys that is going to be at the Under Armour camp here in Charlotte on April 6th. If not, they'll be going to one of these camps where he'll get measured again, and I would not doubt if he is bigger. I believe Don Callahan was saying that he's somewhere in that 320 range. So, I mean, he's put on even more weight and is showing you that he has the size that Carolina needs. Thing that I really liked about him is he did a tremendous job of shedding blocks, and he makes plays on the ball carrier in the backfield pretty consistently on film. He has the strong upper body, which allows him to sort of throw those blockers aside, which is what you need. You need guys that are going to play with a little bit of that mean streak. You certainly get that. Don't question the motor on him either, which is something that we've looked at a lot with the guys that Carolina has got under Bill Belichick. You see a lot of those guys that, never take plays off, seem to be very active, chasing plays down from behind. Those are the types of things that you're looking for, and you get similar notions from him. I said this when I broke him down right after he committed. When he does get to the ball carrier, there are times where he's able to just throw these guys down like it's nothing, which is great. But there's some times where he does sort of suplex guys to the ground. He's got to be really careful with that, because at the college level, we've seen it. That's been called on Carolina before. We saw it with Don Chapman a couple of times a few years ago. And that's something that I think Carolina is going to be aware of, probably telling them, hey, like the fact that you're able to make guys pay when you get to them, but let's make sure that we're not picking them up, slamming them head first into the ground, because that's going to get a penalty. Like the athleticism that he brings for that size, which is really what allows him to cover multiple gaps. Yes, he has the size, but you've got to be athletic enough to cover those two gaps, make sure that nothing gets into those two gaps. That's what you're feeling like when you watch Trashawn Ruffin, and it's something that's sorely needed on this defensive front. I mean, Carolina, they've had guys that have struggled to play one gap, let alone two, really since Aaron Crawford and Jason Strowbridge were here. I think this is what you're hoping he's going to eventually end up being. things that I noticed about him. I think he is going to have to get the pad level down a little bit if he's going to succeed at this level, because he is a guy that pops up out of his stance pretty quick. It allows offensive linemen who have better leverage to be able to get their hands on him and potentially knock him off his feet. So he's got to be aware of that. But I do think that just about everything else about him, you really do like. There will be the natural learning curve for him, but this is a guy that I think has the tools to potentially be a 3 or 4 year contributor along the defensive front for Carolina. And that's what you're hoping for when you land a guy like this, when you land someone that's this highly rated, is can you get multiple years of production out of them? I feel like you can. This is a guy that, is raw, but I do think when you watch him, you see some of the things that the staff really likes about him. And the hope is that those things start to click for him starting this year, where you start to see, more of the highlight plays. You start to see the volume, the production go up. That's what you're looking for from him this year as a senior. But overall, I think this is a really big piece. Now, the question becomes, how much of a focus do you think the defensive line needs to be for Carolina in this class moving forward? Because you've already got the commitment of Trashawn Ruffin at defensive line. You've got David Jackson, who Carolina has committed along the defensive line as well. And I think Ruffin and Jackson both balance each other out really well. So when you got those guys, you've got all the guys that Carolina brought in towards the end of the 2025 class. How important do you think, Zach, it is that Carolina still gets some of the, some guys along the interior of that defensive line? Or do you think that with the guys that they've gotten, Bill Belichick and his staff might be comfortable with the group they have?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of a balancing act here, and I think that's probably for a few reasons. Similar to what we mentioned when we saw these additions at sort of the end of the 2025 class and then moving into the 2025 season, is that really college football as a whole, more specifically the ACC, is seeing an increase in the number of scholarships that they can provide. And North Carolina is taking advantage of that. They can go up from 85 to, I believe, 105 scholarships that they can provide in terms of the team. So they are taking full advantage of that. So there are bigger rosters. There's a larger number of guys on scholarship. So naturally, you're just going to see larger numbers in position rooms. But just with the nature of college football that we see changing all the time, we've had a few years now at this point of the transfer portal, of NIL, the house settlement, is in the news here recently. College football is changing all the time and is becoming more of a migratory sport where guys are coming in and out of your program all the time. And coaches are, taking notice of that. They are cognizant of that. So I think it's a situation in which they are going to try to create the best version of a position room that they possibly can, keeping in mind that, we're going to find the best 8 to 10 guys that can play on our line for this fall. And then for the coming season, we'll figure it out, whether that's bringing in more guys and trying them out, still recruiting. So, I don't think that they're going to take 5 or 6 at the position, but I definitely don't think that they're done. And I think that they're going to try to continue to provide value and provide talent to this room to try to fill out that unit, as it's still clearly a unit that they have a pretty big concern with heading into this fall and then beyond that.
Yeah, no, I think the fact that they are concerned about this unit going into the fall, I think means that they are going to be looking to add as much talent here as possible. Because, if they have to go back to the transfer portal at some point next offseason, it's not the end of the world. But I think they want to avoid having to do that as much as they probably should have this year, where they went and got CJ Mims. That's it. They weren't able to get anybody else. You don't want it to be that big of a need where you need 3 or 4 guys there, because as they found out, it's not that easy to get the guys that you want. I mean, Carolina's got money. Let's not act like they don't. But at the same time, I don't think they have as much money as people thought they would have at this point. So I do think Carolina is still in a good spot. Don't take that to mean that Carolina is not going to be able to get certain guys because of the money. But I think they when it came to the defensive line, they just didn't have everything that they felt like they needed there. And that's why they're going to probably find someone in the transfer portal. I would imagine this within the next few weeks after spring camp is open. Once that spring portal window opens up for football, I would assume they take a risk on somebody if there is someone that enters the transfer portal. And then, I think this class, they are going to hit it hard. I think you could see 3-4 guys at that position. I know they love a guy like Vodney Cleveland out of the state of Alabama. That's a guy that they've been on for a while. And there's some other guys at that position that certainly matter a lot to this staff and that they've been putting in the work with. Darrell Campbell, another guy who just narrowed down his decision here recently, is certainly someone that Carolina seems to value and is in good standing with at this point. So when you've got guys like that, Keyshawn Stansel, the in-state guy as well, I think those are guys that Carolina, they are really hoping that they will be able to swing in this class. And so, you could see 3-4 guys. And I mean, the guys, no offense to the guys that they brought in at the end of this last recruiting cycle, I mean, those guys are incredibly low-rated players. Those are guys that you're hoping, okay, we're bringing them in this year. Hopefully we'll get enough guys on the roster where eventually, hey, if some of those guys step up, great. If not, then those are the guys that you're trying to eventually sort out of those rooms and say, okay, let's get these guys into schools that fit them a little bit better at the lower level, and let's use those scholarships on guys that we think fit at this level. That's going to be part of the process for Carolina with how they've built this roster this year. Another area that Carolina is going to be looking to potentially land someone moving forward at is the quarterback position. Now, here's the thing. Let's start by talking about this, because you got Bryce Baker in this class. You're hoping that he is going to be the guy that eventually takes over and starts for Carolina, whether it's this year, whether it's next year, whenever. You're hoping that he is eventually going to be the future. So Carolina loses the commitment from Zayd Lott in the 2026 class. He, of course, committed to Mack Brown last offseason. That was one that I thought, maybe he ends up staying on. Maybe the staff sees enough from him. But clearly both sides end up deciding that they're going to part ways with each other. He ends up heading to Syracuse. And so now the question is what does Carolina do at the quarterback spot? My question first, Zach, is do you think that Carolina needs a quarterback in this class? Because I have seen some people that have told me maybe Carolina doesn't take one because they don't need one because of Bryce Baker.
I would say, it's my general opinion that you probably need a quarterback per recruiting class. Most sort of roster math that we've used in the 85 scholarship era was that you needed at least 4. They have 4 scholarship guys on the roster right now. They have Bryce Baker, as you mentioned, also recruited another freshman in Terry Newkirk that should be there this fall. Got Ryan Brown from Purdue out of the transfer portal, and then retained Max Johnson on the roster. And, we don't know sort of the health status of Max Johnson entering this year. If he does play, it would likely be his last year. So just based on that math, within what is the 85 scholarship era, now we've moved into the 105. So maybe there's different calculus there, but it does seem like they need one, either another freshman in the 2026 class or get another guy, out of the transfer portal just for a depth reason. So I think they're going to at least try to get a 2026 guy. They've been trying to do that. They did reaffirm Zayd Lott's commitment when sort of the Belichick staff started coming together, but they've not stopped recruiting quarterbacks even with having his commitment. So it's not unforeseen that Zayd Lott would seek opportunities elsewhere to be the quarterback of a recruiting class. But ideally they add one, but if they're not able to find one that they find to be of, a high enough caliber, I don't think it's impossible that you see them either here in the spring or right after the 2025 season ends, that they look for a quarterback to add to this roster.
One thing that'll be really interesting to me, because There are two guys that are not on campus just yet. You mentioned Arturi Newkirk, the guy that they went out and added at the position during the 25 class that we sort of detailed. We knew that they were seeking him out. Then you've got Gary Merrill, who is a guy that played lacrosse, did play quarterback in high school. The question to me is, how are they going to use him? Because if they're going to use him at quarterback, then maybe they feel like it's enough to have moving forward, because after this year, you'd imagine that Max Johnson is moving on, whether it is he's playing this season or at least active to the point where he uses his last year of eligibility, or he doesn't use that year of eligibility and you would think he's moving on to a different program, because you'd imagine that Ryan Brown, Bryce Baker, somebody is able to sort of take a stranglehold on that job. And if not, then Carolina may go out and find someone else in the transfer portal that they feel confident in at that point. So that would leave you with Ryan Brown, Bryce Baker. Then you've got Newkirk and Gary Merrill on scholarship. Then you would have the walk-ons of DJ Mazzoni, Andres Mieres Jr., as well as Hudson Wilharm. Those are guys that are all sophomore walk-ons that are with the team. Not sure how long they will stick around. I'd be very shocked if you see DJ Mazzoni look elsewhere. The other two guys, they could potentially. I mean, I guess that's solid enough, but you just wouldn't have a lot of experience there. So maybe that's where you say, okay, I'd rather bring in a quarterback out of the transfer portal to give you a little bit more experience. I think that Ryan Brown's playing experience, Bryce Baker's playing experience by that point, even if Bryce Baker is to win the job, Ryan Brown would probably be enough. I'm with you. I think each time that you enter a recruiting class, your goal should be bring in one quarterback, because you just never know what's going to happen with the transfer portal. You don't know what's going to happen with injuries to your depth chart, to where you're getting down. I mean, remember, we are not that far removed from Sam Howell, from a Sam Howell injury, potentially allowing Vincent Amendola to be starting a game for Carolina. That certainly is not a situation that you ever want to get back into. And so I think that Carolina is going to push hard here. And to me, I mean, look, there are two guys that they are talking to right now that I think it's very clear that their intentions are to get these guys. That's the 4-star quarterback, Landon Duckworth, out of Jackson High School in Jackson, Alabama. And then you've got Travis Burgess, the 3-star quarterback from Grayson High School in Loganville, Georgia. Both of these guys are really solid high school players. I mean, Landon Duckworth playing with one of the most loaded teams in the state of Alabama. That's one where I think Carolina they are fighting an uphill battle for sure in that one, because there are so many different teams nationally who are in on him. Travis Burgess was a guy that I felt pretty good about up until this past weekend when he took a visit to Auburn, a spot that he had been, pretty high on to begin with. But I thought Carolina was right there with them, especially after the visit the previous weekend to Chapel Hill. Well, now he's starting to get some crystal ball predictions to Auburn. He's starting to get some predictions from On3 Sports. And all of a sudden, you're starting to think to yourself, okay, this is a guy that may not even last until we get to the official visit time of the year, which is, going to start here in April. Carolina is going to have a bunch of guys in the month of April that will be visiting, but he's probably looking more like it's going to be June, because when I talked to him just a couple of weeks ago, he told me it's still going to be a couple of weeks before I release my full official visit schedule, and there is a spot in the month of June that is open for him, so Carolina could potentially slide in there. I mean, you look at those two quarterbacks. I mean, Zach, those seem to be the ones that they're going after right now. But the thing is that I don't know if Carolina is in the best standing with either one of those guys, which makes me wonder if they are going to have to look outside the box just a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've seen sort of their strategy change in a very short period of time. I mean, when you look at it on the whole, this staff has not been recruiting for a very long time together. They just got hired, here in 2025. They're just getting started with their first spring. So not a lot of time under their belt thus far, but we've already seen them be at least tangentially involved with a few quarterbacks. They were mentioned for a guy like Jared Curtis, 5-star quarterback out of Georgia. That did not materialize. Now they're involved with these guys, Travis Burgess and Landon Duckworth, both guys that you mentioned there, 4-star and then a high 3-star out of Alabama and Georgia. And guys that, a good portion of the SEC are recruiting, are pretty high after. They're going to, have some sizable NIL offers there for each of them, I would assume, as it relates to that. So yeah, they're in a tough spot, it seems, right now, and it does look a little bit dicey if you want to get a quarterback committed by the summer official visit scheduled. Now, potentially one of these guys or both could take a visit there. We'll see. I believe it was this past year, the year prior, that they removed the limit on number of official visits. So they are able to, they being North Carolina, are able to bring really these guys, if they have an opening on a weekend or even during the week to some degree, they can bring these guys in for a visit if they want to visit. They're pretty wide open for any point, but it's just, what is your offer to these guys? What do you have here? It's difficult to say. I think that the sort of allure of playing for Bill Belichick does have some cachet, and we've seen guys mention that already in the not only the 2025 class that's starting to come onto campus, but the 2026 class has mentioned that appeal. But what else do they have to go on? That's a little difficult to say right now. So it is in a difficult spot, and it may be a situation where they need to go a little bit outside the box. They need to look for an under the radar guy in the fall, or entering into the spring prior to the next February signing period, similar to how they did with a guy like Arturi Newkirk. I think if there's something to sort of feel optimistic about, it's that there is a lot of trust in this staff, in Bill Belichick and the guys that he has selected for his staff, in their eye for talent, and then their development once it gets on campus, which we feel may be a plus. So in instances where they don't necessarily get guys that are 5 stars or 4 stars or things like that, we do feel that there is a sense that there is going to be an increased level of development, that they're going to pick guys that fit what they want to do. But yeah, it's in a little bit of a rough spot right now, and I think it's going to take maybe more of a example of what this program, what this team is going to be here in the fall, to see if there's a guy that really latches on and says, hey, I want to be the quarterback from North Carolina in the 2026 class.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think getting on the field, I think, will certainly help Carolina. I think being out there, showing what this offense is going to look like, is certainly something that right now we just don't really know. Is it going to be a very pro-style type of offense, or are you going to have Freddie Kitchens, who's been in college football for a few years now? Is he going to run an offense that's similar to what we've seen from even, some of the guys on staff, Matt Lombardi's offense, when we saw it at when he was out there at Oregon? The thing with him, that's another thing. You've got a great quarterbacks coach. You've got a guy that has developed some really good quarterbacks, including Dylan Gabriel, who's probably going to be an NFL player just based off of what we saw from him this past year and the past couple of years when he's been coached by Lombardi. So I think Carolina has the staff in their favor. Now I think it's about figuring out, one, what is this team going to look like just as a whole? Is this a program that has the right type of momentum that we want to jump on? And then what does the offense look like? I think that might be what's holding them back. There were 2 other guys that I thought they got involved with that they could have potentially, ended up getting in a good position for, that they're now out of the race for. I thought Brody McWhorter out of the state of Georgia was a guy that Carolina would be in it for the long haul with. And I thought Derek Zammit, a guy that is out of the state of New Jersey, when Carolina first offered him, seemed like it meant a lot. And for some reason, Carolina has been phased out of that recruitment as well. We talked about how they were, sort of phased out of the Jared Curtis recruitment. That was one that really was going to come down to either Georgia or Oregon. You could tell that's definitely one where big money is involved in that one. Also, the number 2 overall player in the 24/7 Sports composite rankings. It's hard to convince a guy of that caliber to come to Carolina. That's why I know that people are going to be in here suggesting, well, the guy that they should go after is Faison Brandon. I'd love to go after him, but here's the problem. I think he would look at Bryce Baker, say, is Bryce Baker a guy that's going to be starting for them? Because if he is, and I have to wrestle the job away from him after a successful year here coming up in 2025, then that's probably not a spot that I want to be at. He's going to Tennessee right now. Doesn't seem like he's open to being flipped. There are a couple other guys that Carolina has offered that are committed. One guy that would stick out is Javon Gilmore out of Gaffney High School in Gaffney, South Carolina, committed to Arkansas. That's another guy, though. Carolina offered him, didn't really seem to have much of an effect. So I think you're at that point now where you're starting to maybe look at some of these other options, like you said. And I think, there's a couple of good options that Carolina could potentially check in on. I put down two of them, I think, that Carolina could look at here when it's all said and done. Mason Holtzclaw is a guy that was offered by the previous staff. Did not have a good year this past year. Just going to lay it out there that simply. Playing at Arden or playing at the Christ School in Arden, North Carolina, it was pretty rough for him. He completed just 55% of his passes for 945 yards, 4 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, and that was over the course of 8 games. Not much of a runner either, just 29 carries for 146 yards and a touchdown. The guy that I think is very interesting and a guy that's coming off a really good year, also has a baseball background. We've seen Carolina sort of dabble in these types of players here the last few years. Caleb Cost is a name that comes to mind. Carolina's been able to, find a happy middle ground when it's come to bringing in guys that they want on the football side of things and that the baseball team potentially wants on their side of things. I think Jackson Debe, who is an in-state guy, goes to Providence High School right here in Charlotte, could be that type of guy. I mean, last year, completes 58% of his passes for 2,023 yards, 22 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. Again, not much of a runner, 67 carries for 173 yards and 4 touchdowns, but definitely a guy that I could see entering his senior year. He now, is ready to take that next step. I'd be interested to see how he performs at some of these camps this offseason too and see if that helps him. That's a name that I think could be worth watching for Carolina. I think that's the area that they're going to have to dig in to try to find their guy in this class, because unless something drastic changes, Landon Duckworth is going to either commit to South Carolina and head out of state, or, it would be heading out of state, but he would still be close to home at Ole Miss. Those seem like the two options for him right now that are really standing out. And then Travis Burgess, Auburn's always been good recruiting in the Atlanta area. Man, Auburn is sensational at recruiting Grayson High School. That is one of their go-to high schools in that area. They have gone there so many different times to get so many different successful players. I would think that if they are wanting Travis Burgess, and right now that seems like that is their top target at the quarterback position in that class, they are going to end up getting him. So that's going to be a tough one for Carolina to stomach, because I feel like that was the guy that they looked at and identified and said, okay, this is the kid that we are going to go after hard. If we can't get Duckworth, who is clearly atop our board as a high-end 4-star, he's a guy that's almost rated inside the top 50 of the overall prospects. I think he's 53rd overall in the 24/7 Sports composite rankings. Burgess is, clearly further down, a guy that's a very solid 3-star at this point. I think he might, potentially be bordering on getting that 4th star. Somewhat close. 5'11", somewhat close. So, probably, if he goes to a couple of camps and shows out this year, maybe he gets it, but still a really solid 3-star quarterback. I think Carolina really wanted that type of guy, but I just don't know if they're going to find that anywhere unless they can convince Javon Gilmore to back off his commitment from Arkansas, which is going to be tougher than we would have initially thought when Carolina handed out that offer. In terms of the in-state guys, I brought up an in-state guy there that they could potentially offer a quarterback in Jackson DB. But here's the thing. They haven't really been focused on the home state. A lot of their offers, they've been spreading around the country. They've gone to a lot of different places. I mean, Alabama, Mississippi, that's where Carolina really looks like they're trying to establish pipelines right now. The state of Texas is also a spot where they have gotten they have handed out more offers than in the past. California. Those are the spots where Carolina looks like they're getting into. And so because of that, you're starting to see guys in the home state start to take Carolina off of their list. It really was, noticeable when, a couple of the top guys in the state did not have Carolina still in the hunt for them. Now, I mean, the one that's really sticking out is the Harris twins, who last night released their top 10. They, as you would expect, are going to be a package deal. So you've got Aiden Harris, the 4-star defensive lineman who is ranked inside of the top 50, both for 24/7 Sports overall and then for the 24/7 Sports composite rankings. He's actually ranked 40th right now. And then you've got Andrew Harris, his brother, who is a really good player as well, another defensive lineman, guy that is currently rated as a 3-star prospect in this class, but is certainly a guy. Actually, he's also a 4-star. I think he may have just gotten bumped up recently. He's a 4-star prospect as well. Both of those guys out of Weddington High School over there in Weddington, North Carolina, which is right around the Charlotte area. And they were two of the guys that Bill Belichick visited like right away when he got on campus. We saw the photos of him with high school recruits, and these were two of those guys, two guys that I really wanted when we went through my most wanted list, especially Aiden Harris. And now, Carolina's not in the competition for them. They get kicked out. NC State is a team that is still in there as an in-state school. That has to rub you the wrong way a little bit if you're a Carolina fan. And again, we've seen it with some of the other top guys in the state. Gordon Sellers, a 4-star wide receiver. Carolina, nowhere to be found when it comes to his top schools list. Rodney Dunham, the top-rated defensive player in the state, about to make his decision coming up. Carolina never really been a part of that recruitment outside of their original offer, which came under Mac Brown. So when you see that, you've already got Faison Brandon committed to Tennessee. You've got Kendra Harrison, who is, as we saw the other day on social media, solidly committed to Oregon. And at this point, I don't even know if the Tar Heel offer would stand after what he did the other day. I mean, are you starting to get a little bit worried about what Carolina is doing in state, despite landing the number 12 overall guy in the state in Trashawn Ruffin?
Yeah, I think it's complicated, is really the way that I would have to look at it. I mean, there's a few things to look at here just in terms of when you look at how recruiting is going in the state of North Carolina, you do see instances where there are guys, like you mentioned, that are listing top 5s or top 10s that do not have North Carolina in there and may have another school like NC State or Duke. With that, even though those schools are in there, it does not appear, at least from the commitments that have already been established, that sort of top 10 to top 15, and then where a lot of these crystal balls are leaning, that these guys are going to go to those options. A lot of these guys that we see within the top 10, top 15 are leaning towards out-of-state options. And more that looks to be the nature of what we see in recruiting, that there's less and less emphasis from the player side on proximity to home that we've seen in the past. Mm-hmm. There's greater access to have mom and dad and grandpa come out to games at different locations. Travel is a little bit easier than it's been in the past. And the advent of NIL in the transfer portal means that, there is a monetary aspect that guys are considering, and also players know if I don't necessarily like it at the first place that I go to, I can always come back home. And that is at least a silver lining that North Carolina can keep in mind. And they've been able to get guys that have left the state initially and then come back to play at North Carolina. So with that, I think that's a consideration there. Another thing just to mention, though, it's been our position with this current staff, with the previous staff, even the staff before that, in-state recruiting is paramount to what North Carolina wants to be. That's not necessarily the emphasis that we've seen from the staff in recruiting thus far. I mean, we saw a lot at the end of the 2025 cycle. They're going to go all over, but they're also going to emphasize the areas that the different members of the staff already had connections with. We saw a lot of guys from, California and the Pacific Northwest get recruited, transfer in, due to that connection of the staff members that were previously at Washington. There's a number of guys from California that are committed in this class. And then we've seen, and this is a lot of the sort of Bill Belichick influence, is he's always been a guy that's admired the New Jersey area, the New York, just having that proximity. So we've seen them offer and get guys from that area, from Pennsylvania, from places like that. So the focus from this staff does not seem to be North Carolina specific or even locally specific to the Southeast. So, is that going to work out? I think it's difficult to say. It's very early to see what this is going to be. We put a lot of premium, like we mentioned earlier, into the player development that we're likely to see from this staff and just the eye for talent. But it's also a situation where in previous episodes we mentioned, there's a ton of talent around locally. And there's not really any reason that you should not be within that top 10 or top 5. Those should be viewed as, at the very least, disappointments for how North Carolina is recruiting right now. So we will see. We'll see where they end up overall. And, it is still early recruiting-wise. It is just now April. You've got a whole summer period. You've got the fall. But it is a little bit of a shaky start in-state, to say the least. We'll see how they finish overall. But like we mentioned, similar to their search for a quarterback, I think that this staff still has something to prove. I don't think that there's a lot of overall track record in college specifically for a number of these guys that recruits can really draw on at the moment, though there are a few, pretty stark examples, such as your wide receiver coach, your defensive back coach, where we, see a lot of that track record. But, there's a lot of NFL on this staff that sort of has to prove that they can coach at this level. Now, they coach at a higher level, but these kids, these 16, 17-year-olds, they don't know you. So I think there is sort of that period right now of this staff needs to show recruits and their families, here's who we are. We're here at North Carolina. We're going to be at North Carolina. I think that's also a concern right now of what is the longevity of this coaching staff in this program. That is something that they have tried to rebuff, but are going to have to continue to do probably for a few years, similar to the Mac Brown age question that we saw with the previous coaching staff. And it's just going to be a process. It's going to be slow to start out, but we've already seen some results, such as Trashawn Ruffin that we mentioned at the beginning of the show. And it's just going to be a patience process here to see what they can show in the fall, what they can sort of sell on the recruiting trail based on that, and how they can continue to grow these relationships with players, with families, and then with the high schools that they go out to.
I'll say it like this. I think it's very similar to kind of where we're at with Carolina basketball in terms of the transfer portal there, recruiting on that side, just the overall state of the program. If you are feeling concerned about that, then you're validated. There's reasons to feel concerned. I think it's the same thing here on the football side of things. I think that if you are concerned about the way they are recruiting in state, then you've got a reason to be concerned, because you're talking about more than likely you are not going to land any of the top 5 players in the state of North Carolina. Hard to get a read on where exactly Pierre Dean's recruitment stands as of right now. Carolina has not been a team that's been very evident, or it hasn't been very evident that they have been going after him. He has not been a guy that's frequented campus. He is not someone that, as far as I know, has even visited during the spring. And so that kind of shows you where it's at. And then you go, to the next group of guys. Yeah, you've got Keyshawn Stansel in there. I do think that Stansel is a guy that has really taken a liking to Trashawn Ruffin. That's a guy that I think is going to be key in that recruitment if Carolina is going to be able to land him. The thought of teaming up with a guy like Ruffin, Stansel, a guy at 6'3", 270, a little bit smaller, fits more of that pass rusher type defensive lineman as opposed to Ruffin, who is more of that run stopper that Carolina needs in the middle of that group. But you're talking about Samari Matthews. He ended up visiting over this weekend. That could be something to keep an eye on, but he's expected as of right now, trending towards Clemson. Leo Delaney, an interior offensive lineman, guy that, could play at the tackle spot as well at a Providence Day School. Good play, really good player, guy that, Carolina, was in on from the Mac Brown time, did come to campus, but has since received a crystal ball and is trending towards Tennessee. So those are the guys that Carolina is missing on right now. Yeah, you're hoping that you can get Xavier Griffin-Haynes back on. That would be big for you along the defensive line. I know that Carolina has been talking a lot, and it seems like they're very high on the list for J.B. Shabazz, the offensive tackle from East Forsyth High School in Kernersville. I think the fact that you have that relationship between him and Bryce Baker, who he protected this past year, that could certainly go in your favor. So, yeah, you can see there are some guys that Carolina is involved with, but you're seeing a lot of guys that have Carolina off of their list. Carolina is not really seeming all that interested. And when you talk to them, they say, yeah, I'm going to campus and I'm hoping that I'm going to be able to get some sort of official visit scheduled, for certain guys, even get an offer, and they're just not coming through right now for Carolina. So I'll be interested to see. There are some big time decisions that are going to be coming down here, I think, sooner rather than later. Guys that have already put Carolina on their visit list, like Devarius Surratt, Larique Pettis out of Crest High School, both of those guys out of the school in Shelby. Both of those guys are going to be on campus here next weekend. So for official visits, that could tell you a lot. If Carolina is able to land one or both of those guys, you start to feel a little bit better about what they're doing in state. They miss on both of those guys end up taking official visits elsewhere and eventually end up committing elsewhere. Then you're starting to wonder, because then even some of the depth guys in this class are not committing to you. So it'll be interesting. The thing that I think a lot of people are trying to say that are not concerned about it is that, well, Carolina is doing a great job of recruiting elsewhere throughout the country. Here's the problem, is that we have seen countless guys here in the last couple of weeks. There was one today that ends up narrowing down his decision to however many schools, sets an official visit date. We've seen that so many times, one or the other or both, here in the last couple of weeks. All of these guys that I'm checking in on, when I look at where their recruitments stand on a lot of these websites, none of them have Carolina as the favorite. Carolina is not trending for any of these guys. It is the in-state schools that are doing really well with these guys, or it's one of these big-time programs. So, yes, Carolina is handing out these offers to guys around the country, and I think eventually you could end up starting to land some of these guys. But you also could be left with some guys similar to what they brought in this last class. And I know they're looking for a specific type of guy. You could say, well, they just don't want to take on anybody from in-state, because we've seen them take a lot of in-state guys under Mac Brown, and it didn't end up working out for some of them. The thing is that you go back and you look at when Carolina has been the most successful. And I know that this is a new era of college sports, but when Carolina has been its most successful on the football side, it is because they are doing it with homegrown talent. That is the area that they have been able to lock down, that they have built a lot of those teams off of, are guys from the home state. So hopefully, I just hope that the staff is valuing the in-state guys the way that they should be. You've got the advantage of being the home state team. I get that money is the most important thing right now. Well, you're saying that you supposedly have it, and you've got the proximity advantage as well for a lot of these guys. A lot of these guys do want to stay close to home. It's just, can you give me the right environment that I'm looking for? Can you pay me the type of money that I'm looking for in this modern era to be able to succeed? I'll be interested to see, as you said, what happens when Carolina actually takes to the field and starts playing games. And unfortunately, I think in this 26 class, they're trying to flex their muscle a little bit and bring in a pretty decent class. But at the same time, you haven't seen what this staff looks like coaching on Saturdays. You mentioned the amount of time that Carolina, could have these guys in place. We have no idea what that timeline is. We don't know if there's going to be stability, even if Bill Belichick does move on. Does someone like Steven Belichick take over, Matt Lombardi take over, something like that, where you keep most of this staff in place and just kind of keep rolling it forward. So until you get some of those types of answers, I think it is going to be tough for Carolina on the recruiting trail. And it's why you have to hope that a lot of these guys are sort of pushing back their decisions. I don't think they're going to. I think there's going to be a lot of decisions in the summer, but this is where you really have to do a good job of selling yourself. And that's why I think in-state guys could be the ones that are willing to take risks on you. I just hope that this staff is really taking the right approach in state and focusing on some of the guys that they need to be. That's going to wrap it up for this edition of the podcast, guys. Make sure you head over to the website, HeelToughBlog.com. As I mentioned, a bunch of guys that have been releasing their top school lists, that have been releasing their official visits, all of that stuff. Anytime that we've got somebody that releases one of those, we are writing an article. We are putting it up on the website for you guys. So make sure you go back and check out all the recent ones, including wide receiver Omari Johnson, who is going to be on campus this weekend for his official visit. That starts out the official visit schedule. As of right now, he is the only one that I know of. I will get a primer up on him, sort of detailing again where his recruitment stands heading into the weekend. He's actually going to start his visit tomorrow, so I'll make sure that I have that up on the website for you guys tomorrow. So make sure you check out all of that. And then anything that is coming out, again, it is very minimal what's coming out, exactly as we expected from Bill Belichick. There is not a lot that's coming out around spring practice. But when we do find out something, or we are now 9 days away from the open practice where fans will be allowed in the stadium. It is April 12th at 6:30. They are expecting to start the practice, or I think that might be when gates open. It's one of the two. There's an article on Go Heels that'll tell you when exactly that is and all the details that you need. That might be our first look at this team, and that might be the first time we've talked about him since Bill Belichick met with the media. So we'll have all that coverage for you guys. Make sure you're checking it out over there on the website. And then, of course, basketball side of things, anything that's going on right now with the transfer portal, with recruiting, any of that kind of stuff, we have you covered, especially with the portal stuff. Henry Vasar, that saga that's going on now that'll continue here probably over the next couple of days. We'll keep you up to date on that. Any new guys that Carolina is interested in that they eventually end up hosting, we will have all of that information for you. Josh will be writing all the articles, and then him and I reacting on the podcast side of things for you guys. So make sure you check out all of that stuff. Best place to do it, HeelToughBlog.com. Check it every morning, afternoon, and evening, or very simple, just go to Twitter, search Heel Tough Blog on Twitter, follow us, and then turn on our post notifications. Those are the only things that we post on there, are just our articles, our podcasts, all that stuff, so you won't miss any of that stuff on there. Make sure you guys check that out. But once again, that's going to wrap it up for this edition of the show. Want to thank Zack for hosting with me. Want to thank you guys for watching and listening. And as always, go Tar Heels.